A parent's worst nightmare happened to Robert and Virginia Greenlease in 1953. During a visit to the Forest Hill Cemetery in Kansas City, I had a chance to revisit one of the most horrific crimes in the history of that city, or of our country for that matter. Stay tuned as History Hunters looks back to September 28, 1953, and the tragic circumstances surrounding the murder of Robert Greenlease Jr., an innocent 6-year-old who was the center of a sick and demented plot to extort money from his parents.
So this mausoleum behind me is apparently called the Abbey, and there's one particular young victim of a homicide that was very well known back in the days, back in the 50s. I got the key to go inside. You have to get the key, but they trusted me with it. This is the Forest Hill Abbey, and just looking by the steps, it's severely neglected. I have no idea what date this is, but it looks pretty old. Let's unlock it. Oh. So you come all the way to the end. You see the grave of a Dr. Sam Roberts. Right here is the grave we're looking for. Robert C. Greenlease Jr., 1947 to 1953. And his parents are above, Robert and Virginia. Now, this is probably the most horrifying ransom extortion plot you've ever heard of.
Robert was attending Notre Dame de Sion, a Catholic elementary school at 3823 Locust Avenue in Kansas City. About an hour before the lunch bell, a woman named Bonnie Heady came to the school claiming to be the aunt of Bobby's with a story that Bobby's mother had suffered a heart attack while shopping on the Country Club Plaza. The woman told the nun in charge that she needed to take Bobby out of the class. Heady led the unsuspecting child to a cab and drove to Katz Drug Store at 40th and Main Streets. Waiting there in Bonnie's 1951 Plymouth station wagon was boyfriend Carl Hall. The three headed west to a remote area of Overland Park, Kansas, where Carl Hall took the boy out of the car and attempted to strangle him with a short piece of rope. Little Bobby fought back, so Hall struck him in the head and face several times. He then shot the boy in the head. About 30 minutes after the school was tricked into releasing Bobby, staff called the Greenlease home to inquire as to the condition of Virginia Greenlease. She happened to answer the phone and was horrified when learning that her son had been kidnapped. Hall and Heady drove the boy's body to St. Joseph to the home of Bonnie Heady at 1201 South 38th Street. They proceeded to bury the body in the backyard and planted about a dozen chrysanthemums over the grave to disguise it as a flower bed. The body would remain there until it was discovered on October 7th. The couple made their return to Kansas City to begin negotiations with the Greenlease family for a $600,000 ransom, staying first at the El Rancho Motel on Highway 40.
It's a pretty logical question. You're probably asking yourself, why were the Greenleases targeted? Robert Greenlease Sr. was a prominent businessman here in Kansas City. He owned a Cadillac dealership. He was worth approximately $24 million. So the couple knew that, and they thought they'd extort the money out of him. Unfortunately, the little boy suffered at the hands of two evil people who valued money over valuable lives and children. I don't fathom that kind of evil behavior. But yet there are people in this world to this day that are that evil. The Hall originally planned to kidnap the Greenlease's daughter here, Virginia Sue Greenlease, who was just 6 years older than Bobby, but the couple decided to target Bobby instead, thinking he would put up less of a fight. I was struck when I saw a picture of the grieving family leaving the mausoleum after they interred Bobby, and how Virginia actually managed to smile at the photographers in that moment of grief. Apparently she had some resilience. So Virginia Sue married in 1962. She got divorced and she married a Randolph Paul Sturck in 1979, and he died a year later. She had her fair share of tragedies in life. She died at the age of 42 in 1984. Virginia is interred on the opposite wall facing her brother and her parents. Such a very tragic thing for any family to endure.
Hall, the mastermind of the plot, was familiar with the successful Greenlease family. He had attended military school with Paul Greenlease, Bobby's older adopted brother. To arrange for the ransom money, Robert Greenlease Sr. contacted Arthur Eisenhower, Executive Vice President of the Commerce Trust Company. Without knowing the boy was already dead, the ransom money was paid on October 4th, 1953, and the suspects fled to St. Louis. On October 5th, Hall transferred the ransom cash from a duffel bag to 2 metal suitcases, ditching the duffel bag in an ash pit. Hall then drove an intoxicated Bonnie Heady to a quickly rented apartment on Arsenal Street in St. Louis. Heady passed out in her sleep, and Hall deserted her, leaving only $2,000 of the $600,000 ransom. A short time later, Hall hooked up with cab driver John Oliver Hager and prostitute Sandra O'Day and hid out at the Coral Court Motel on Route 66. Hall drank heavily for days and carelessly threw around lots of money, which drew Hager's suspicions that he was an embezzler. Hager reported his suspicions to Joe Costello, a local mobster and owner of the cab company, who in turn reported Hall on October 6 to St. Louis Police Lieutenant Louis Shoulders of the 11th District Precinct Station. Lieutenant Shoulders and Officer Elmer Dolan arrested Hall that night to begin questioning his extravagant spending, but the FBI was quick to link Hall to the kidnapping. Hall gave up Heady's whereabouts, and she was arrested that same night. Police had the grisly task of unearthing the body of Robert Greenlease the following day. A search of Bonnie Heady's abandoned station wagon turned up 2 shells that were fired in the murder. Hall and Heady were indicted by a grand jury on October 30th, 1953, and days later they had entered guilty pleas before 80-year-old U.S. District Court Judge Albert L. Reeves. On November 16th, they were tried and found guilty, receiving the death sentence. Saying the verdict fit the evidence, Judge Reeves remarked, quote, "It is one of the most cold-blooded, brutal murders I have ever tried." Justice was swift. On December 18, 1953, just 81 days after the kidnapping and murder, Hall and Heady were executed side by side in the gas chamber of the Missouri State Penitentiary in Jefferson City. Apparently handling the money was too much temptation for the 2 Kansas City police officers who arrested Hall. Lieutenant Louis Ira Shoulders and Patrolman Elmer Dolan stated that they had brought the suitcases of money to the 11th District Precinct Station, but over half the $600,000 was missing. Both officers were convicted of perjury and spent years in jail. Some theorized that the police officials kept the missing money, and another theory had the blood money going to mobsters, or even the prostitute herself. It felt eerie walking up the same steps that pallbearers carried the casket of little Bobby Greenlease to his final resting place nearly 70 years ago. They were the same steps that the grief-stricken parents took to return to a home filled with a huge void. Now, all 4 members of the family are reunited inside the mausoleum. The tragic death of a child can cause a community's grief to ripple across the country. The community of Kansas City was shocked, and the Greenlease business was closed while the couple buried their dear child. Condolences poured in from across the world. I found this metal plaque on the wall, still in place after 70 years, next to Bobby's crypt. It is an expression of grief from the community of Lorate Como, Italy. In delving into this case, I relived the sorrow of a family I never knew and years before I was born. I believe I felt the same anger as did the folks in Kansas City when they learned about this dastardly crime. And I'm being honest when I say I'm glad that Carl Hall and Bonnie Heady received the just penalty for what they did, and only wish our system of justice were as swift and decisive today. Far too many evil deeds are being carried out, in part because consequences have been softened in this country.